Okay, thank you. You have our letter to Prime Minister Carney, and I'll just highlight a few points from that letter. Our starting premise is that the Access to Information Act is no longer fit for purpose. In fact, we think it is broken. That may sound like strong language, but we don't think it is. Firstly, it's not my style to use excessive language, but also the literature on this act is redolent with much stronger terms than that. I will highlight just one piece of evidence to bolster that or to backstop that claim. Canada sits in a dismal 53rd position out of 140 countries with access to information laws, according to the respected Right to Information rating, which measures the strength of the law. Our second starting premise is that successive reviews have failed to fix this act. And the last review, which was presented to Parliament in late 2022, was particularly unfortunate inasmuch as it called only for practice reforms and not for amending the Act, even though everyone knows that the Act needs to be amended. In our opinion, a key contributing factor for the failure of that review was that it was undertaken by Treasury Board Secretariat, TBS. Of course, Treasury Board Secretariat is subject to the Act, so when it engages in a reform of the Act, that puts it in a conflict of interest. It's hardly going to call for a much stronger Act, creating much stronger obligations for itself. Another review is due to be kicked off later this month. If it is the same as the last review, it will not only be a waste of public resources and also our valuable time and effort, it will also undermine public trust. That is something that the government cannot afford at this challenging time for the country. During the election, Prime Minister Carney called for an objective review, end quote. We endorse that call. In the annex to the letter, you will see a set of terms of reference, which we have put together. And those terms of reference indicate what an objective review means for us. And I'll highlight here just 3 key points of that, and you can delve down into the terms of reference for more detail. The first is that the panel overseeing the review should be independent of government and other political biases. That for us is of the essence. The second is that the panel should have a broad mandate and powers to conduct the review. It needs to be able to do a proper review. And the third is that it should have sufficient resources so that it can roll out the review and undertake proper consultation with Canadians. And just finally, it's not enough to do an excellent review if nothing happens after that. So we're also calling on the Prime Minister to implement the recommendations of the panel, the independent panel, when they come out. Thank you, and I'll now hand over to Matt to read the letter.
Thanks, Toby. My name is Matt Malone. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law. I'm going to read the letter that we submitted to the Right Honourable Mark Carney and the Honourable Shafkat Ali earlier today with several other stakeholders. So, dear Prime Minister, we, the undersigned organizations and individuals, are writing to you to urge you to conduct a genuine and timely review of the Access to Information Act. The Access to Information Act requires the government to conduct a review every 5 years, with the next review due to commence by Wednesday, June 18, 2025. We are of the view that the last review, which led to a report to Parliament in late 2022, suffered from serious structural flaws. As Toby notes, a key problem with the review was that it was led by the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat, which represents a fundamental conflict of interest given that TBS itself is governed by the Access to Information Act. I'm just going to pause and say previous government-led reviews, we know what they look like. We've had a lot of them in the past, and we don't need another one. It's time for an independent review. So to resume the letter, we're calling for an upcoming review to be conducted in a fundamentally different manner, namely under the guidance of a panel that is independent with a broad mandate to consider all reform needs and with sufficient resources to conduct robust consultations with Canadian stakeholders. Anything less than such an independent, comprehensive, consultative review would not only represent a waste of valuable public resources, but it would inevitably further erode public trust in the access to information system. The Access to Information System was designed to ensure government transparency and accountability, but it is now recognized by all independent stakeholders no longer to be fit for purpose. The respected right to information recognized by all, right to information rating assesses the Access to Information Act in Canada as earning only 93 points out of a possible 150, which ranks us 53rd in a position among 140 countries globally with such laws, a dismal standing for a respected democracy like Canada. The transparency which the Access to Information Act should deliver is, among other things, undermined by its limited scope, excessive delays, an unreasonably broad regime of exceptions, and bureaucratic resistance. We also call on the Carney government to commit, following the review, to amend the Access to Information law in line with the broad thrust of the panel's recommendations and to introduce, again, in line with the broad thrust of the panel's recommendations, such practices as are necessary to ensure that the Access to Information Act actually delivers on its promise of transparency. Time after time, Canadian governments have committed to introducing serious reforms, but time after time, they only end up making minor changes, and this should not happen again. So to support this call, we are including in Annex 1 of the Act, as Toby showed, a broad draft terms of reference to guide the review. And while the government may want to tweak the specific language of the draft terms of reference, we believe that the core principles they reflect should be preserved in the final version. Transparency is the foundation of public trust. Not only is public trust in government at an all-time low in Canada, as in many countries, but never in its history has such trust been more important for Canada as the country faces serious economic challenges and the need to engage in deep financial and business environment reforms. During the election, Prime Minister Carney promised a review of the Access to Information Act, stating an objective review of the Act would serve Canadians well. We salute this sentiment, and we note, given it is subject to the Act, that the Treasury Board Secretariat cannot deliver such an objective review. The time to conduct this review is now, as part of the obligation under the Act to undertake a 5-year review. So we urge Prime Minister Carney to move with dispatch to put in place a review which is in line with what we are asking, and we note that history will remember him very kindly for it. Thank you.
If we have any questions online, please use the raise hand function now. Si vous avez une question en ligne, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction lever main. We don't have any questions online, so if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yes, so I'd just like to make a final statement to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Carney, some things are not for sale. Canada is not for sale. Well, neither is its democracy or the accountability which underpins that. Secrecy is a fraud on accountability. Let's work together to build the strong, free, and democratic Canada, which is ultimately what is needed to resist the external shocks we are currently facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.